Welcome to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio, bringing you insights and strategies to help you create a magnificent and fulfilling second half of life. Here's your host, certified professional retirement coach and best-selling author, Dr. Dorian Mintzer.
I want to welcome everybody today to my fourth Tuesday Revolutionize Your Retirement interview with expert series. I'm Dorian Mintzer. I'm owner of Revolutionize Retirement and your host for today. Without any further ado, let me introduce Alice Aspen March, who's our guest today. And I met Alice. I have never met her in person, but I connected with her really through Helen Dennis. Alice, just to tell you a little of the backstory, Alice was in the second of the renewment groups that Helen and Bernice Bratton had organized, and Helen was our guest last month. And so Alice was in touch with me, and I was so impressed with her work and part of what I love about this program and this field is I keep meeting all these wonderful people. So I decided to have Alice join us, and she has agreed. So let me tell you a little about her. Alice Aspen March sometimes is referred to as the attention lady, and she's been researching, writing, and speaking about the impact of attention on our emotional well-being for over 25 years. She's led men and women, children and adolescents and seniors across the world to discover and successfully meet their emotional needs. She's founder and executive director of FACT, which is Focusing Awareness on Children and Television. She sold and co-produced the Emmy-nominated documentary Latchkey to Kids, narrated by the late actor Christopher Reeve. She lobbied successfully to keep Mr. Rogers and his neighborhood on the air, commissioned a satirical play called Box In, which went through the Los Angeles School District, and the focus of Boxed In was portraying television's impact on children socially, physically, and mentally. Alice was twice appointed by the California State Senate to state commissions, the future funding of PBS, and the National Conference on the Family. She's appeared on numerous television and radio shows and has been abundantly quoted in magazine articles and on the Internet. She's been an executive coach, an after-school enrichment program planner, a producing artist, and a mentor for career planning. As you can see, she's had a quite varied and wonderful background. She's also mother of 3 adult sons, grandmother of 3 new adults, and the great-grandmother of 1 almost-year-old baby boy. 5 years ago, she made a major transition in her life and moved from her 45-year life in Los Angeles to New York City. And in New York, she continues her groundbreaking work on attention. So I am so delighted to have you with us today, Alice. And I know you just have returned from Monterey, California, and you were part of the Renaissance weekend. So let me just ask you and get you started by saying, what got you involved and prompted you to start work in the area of attention?
Mighty question.
A mighty lady.
Thank you for your kind introduction, really. I have to preface this by saying that I didn't really know anything about attention. The first time I was asked, Alice, what do you need? I didn't even understand the question. But I was on a quest to find out the role I had played in my youngest son's dysfunctional behavior. He had gone from heavy television viewing to drug usage, and I was terrified that I could lose him. This is over the top for me because my 2 older boys did not go that route. So I really was determined to find out what I had done. And I started staying home more. I was still executive director of the nonprofit, but I stayed home more. I was more conscious of being at home and having my home the center of all that age group. I was the resident mother, the resident driver, the resident consultant. And I met a guy. We always meet a guy, don't we? And he said, I want to take you to UCLA to hear this psychologist speak. You'll love him, Alice. So we went, and it ended up that I did love him, even though he copied my work. But more importantly, he was talking about Harry Harlow's monkeys. And he said because Harry Harlow built 2 cages and put baby monkeys in them. One had a baby bottle that was attached to a thing, and the other one had a monkey that was wrapped in terry cloth that was also attached on the side of the cage. And he happened to say, when baby monkeys don't get the kind of attention they need, they become antisocial, wither away, and ultimately die. And that was interesting to me. I'd never heard that before. But I had an epiphany over the word attention. And I thought, this is important for me to find out more about. It was a clue, I felt. So not knowing anything about it, excuse me, I have to cough for 1 second. I went in the back of, I bet, 70 books to look up and see if they talked about attention at all. Nothing in the indexes of these books, no matter whether I went to parenting or legaling or medicine or social stuff or anything except attached to ADHD and ADD. That was not what I was looking for. I knew that. But I got in, I don't know why I even had this book, but I had Bernard Siegel's book, Love, Medicine, and Miracles. He was a surgeon. He still is a surgeon, but he may be retired today also. And I was thumbing through it, and I came across an incident where a surgeon and his potential patient were hanging out on a Friday afternoon, just talking and getting to know each other. And the surgeon said, I want you in here on a Monday. I want to redo the x-ray and see what's going on before we do surgery on Tuesday. So the patient came in on Monday, had the x-ray. The doctor came in and said, I wish we'd started sooner. I don't know what happened, but your tumor has shrunk. And the patient said, I know what happened. When I was here with you on Friday, just hanging around, I felt so safe and so taken care of, and that I was going to be all right. And I said to myself, that's the kind of attention I'm looking for. So I then spent 2 years researching, and that's why I'm talking to you today.
That is very powerful. So maybe you can share a little of what have you learned and how has it changed your life? Because it sounds like it, as you said, it was epiphany. So what has happened since then for you?
It has changed my life, and it also, when people understand what I know now about attention, it changes their lives. First of all, I moved to New York City all by myself because it's simply that I know how to give myself the kind of attention I need. It's that basic. And this... did anybody ever ask you when you were growing up, what kind of attention do you want from me?
I must say I never had that question.
Well, you're not alone. None of us did. None of us did. And you know what? Nobody is today until they hear this crazy lady, me. When I talk to groups and I ask them that question, they laugh. They laugh. Attention has gotten... First of all, I don't know any other word like this, because it's a mainstream word that we've known about our whole lives. We've been asked to pay attention, and we see attention in the magazines and in the newspapers, and we hear it all the time. But I guess I'm the first person to look at it in a different paradigm, because I can see attention. I can feel it, I can smell it, I can hear it, and I can sense it. And everybody can, because it's dimensional. Attention has an energy to it. That word that I've made into I don't know, I've done something that I don't know what I've done, but it changes the way people look at themselves and at everybody in their lives, because it is simply our primary need. And our need for attention starts when we're born. And from what I can gather, until we're 2.5 years old and can figure out who gives us the kind of attention that makes us feel good, and there are only 2 kinds of attention, as somebody said to me, yucky or yummy, good or bad. as an infant, we get to engage in that process of figuring out what makes us feel good and who gives us that. It's just an innate process that is universal. And if we don't get to go through that process, it's very unfortunate, because you and I know people, and everybody knows people, who spend their whole lives looking for the attention they need. They act out for it, because if you don't get what you need it so badly that you will act out for any attention. That's the process.
I've heard. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you
I was
go
just
ahead.
going to say, I have a story. A lady told me she never got any attention for A's, but when she got B minuses or C's, that's when she got attention. And I did a lot of work in the 12-step program because I just wanted research, really. I wanted to see why they were there. And I got wonderful things that they didn't even know I thought were wonderful, like the only way I could get any attention in my family was to be the black sheep. Or I started drinking to get my mother's attention, and that's why I'm in the 12-step program. So it fascinates me to this day. And I'm more passionate than ever because our young people are definitely not getting the kind of attention they need with all this technology that they're engaged in. Okay, I'm through for the moment.
Well, it was making me think about a number of things, but one part is it's easier to think about lack of attention when we see kind of abuse and neglect. And there's been this horrific headline. We have it so much here in Boston because it's local here, but I think it's been around the country, about this little baby doe who was for a few months this unidentified child that had washed up ashore in a garbage bag. And finally, just a couple of days ago, they learned the horrific events that had happened to her. And so in those extreme cases, we really see neglect and abuse and lack of attention. But what I'm hearing from you is the more subtle part, and of just the dilemma of the mismatch. I guess it's the mismatch that I'm hearing of what happens if there's a mismatch between what the parents can give and what a child needs. And so no matter, even if somebody's trying to do their best, if it feels like you're not getting attention, then it can lead to this kind of inward despairing, I guess, is what I'm implying from what you're saying.
You've triggered so many things I want to say. Yes. And people say, I love you a lot. But it's not enough to just say, I love you a lot. You have to treat the people to whom you're saying it lovingly. And if you don't do that, there is a forever outage. Now, you're in Boston with all the colleges. And I've written a book for college kids, too, because I feel so badly. They've been very neglected in a certain way, but I don't want to go down that line right now. But the statistics coming out of the college kids' campuses, is frightening. The statistics of depression, of alcoholism, of drug usage, of dropping out. 40% of college kids drop out before they graduate. And now it's suicide. So I've had a look at that, too, and I wrote a book for that age, as I said. But the research is coming in on that now, and part of the depression is due to the over-parenting, which is called, now my mind is going, helicopter parenting.
Helicopter parenting. Yeah.
Because, you see, this age group of parents thinks that if they do everything for their kids and show up everywhere, that they're giving them the right kind of attention. But they're not, because they're doing everything, and these kids go to college and they don't know how to do anything. And that's why the depression. We come from no parenting at all. This is comparatively new, the whole idea of maybe you have to be responsible for your children as they're growing up. Yeah, and our age group of your audience, the older side, never got the kind of attention they need because their parents didn't get it. So it's nobody's fault. It's just that it's long overdue that we understand what the human being needs. And I don't know why I was chosen to do this, but I'm like a zealot about this. And I'll talk. The first time I wrote a book, they said, "Who's your audience?" And I said, "Everybody." No, it can't be everybody. It can't be everybody. It has to be a certain group. It is everybody, because everybody needs attention. They need different attention at different times in their lives. But the secret to success to having a relationship really is to ask the people you're in a relationship with, what kind of attention do you want from me? And if you don't know right now, because this is such a rare conversation, rare question, if you don't know right now, think about it. And when you've decided what kind, please tell me so we can talk about it, or I can give it to you. Now, this is healthy living. And you have to ask for the kind of attention you need, because you'll never get it if you don't, because we imagine, all of us have grown up imagining, that people will know what kind of attention we need. And guess what happens when we don't get it? The divorce rate is pretty high.
Right. We get angry, the divorce.
We get angry. We withdraw. We turn off. We stop communicating. For openers, that's what we do. When I give my workshops, I always wear a scarlet A. And, of course, there's a lot of questions about that. But it's not for Alice. It's for the scarlet A that Nathaniel Hawthorne wrote about, which is for adultery. Now, why did this lovely gal named Hester Prynne go down the street? That's what she did. And that's what wives do. And that's what husbands do. Because they can't say, they just don't know how to say, "You're not giving me the kind of attention I want. You're not talking to me. You come home at night and sit right in front of the television set. Or you're on your cell phone when we go out for dinner. Or you tell me you're coming home at 6 o'clock at night, and I have dinner ready at 6 o'clock at night, and you don't even call me up. You come home at 8.
So
Am I talking too fast?
No, but you're saying a lot of very important things. So part is knowing what we need, being able to articulate it and communicate it, and hope that who we need it from is receptive and that they can do the same thing, which is hard. And I think, I'm just trying to think about everybody who's on the call, that when we think about it, and not everybody has grown up where there hasn't been attention. Many people have been very blessed and have had some, but I think for most people, there's some laxes here or there. I'm just reminded, I just read a manuscript of a friend and colleague who may or may not be on the call today about legacy, Meg Newhouse, and she'll be one of our speakers at a future time, and her book's wonderful, and it's about, because partly what you're talking about is the legacy of attention or not. So if people grew up not really getting attention themselves, then they may be passing on, even though they want to be a different kind of parent, they may not be able to be a different kind of parent, and then you pass it on, and then you pass it on and pass it on. And so what I hear in what you're saying is at some point you need to stop, hopefully, and say, what do I need? It's part of what's been part of the women's movement from the 70s on. What do I need? How do I try to get it? And attention is such a big part. So I'm just underscoring, I love your approach to this, so keep going. So what do people need to do to identify it for themselves and to make it work?
Okay. I lived in Los Angeles, and I lived there for 45 years, and my kids left. They live in Thailand and in Austin, Texas, and in San Diego. I was all by myself, and all I did was, I was divorced at the time. And the reason I was divorced was because I did not know how to get the kind of attention I needed. That's the bottom line. And I never asked for it because I didn't know. And first of all, we need to know what kind of attention we need and give it to ourselves. That's primary. Because if we don't, we're always looking for it. And I'll tell you a story about a woman at work. She was in one of my workshops, and she was like crazy because she said, our boss calls meetings all the time, and we go in, and he's either on the phone or he's on his computer, but he's not present. And I said, how do you feel when you leave? She says, I'm depleted. I'm like worn out, and I feel invisible. She said, what should I do? I said, okay, here's what I'd like you to do. The next time you see him in the hall, say, could I have a 4-minute meeting with you, with just you and I and no technology? He said, sure, 4 minutes. I'll give you 4 minutes. Anybody will give anybody 4 minutes. It's a small amount of time. So she goes in, and they have the meeting, and he's present and accounted for, and so is she. And at the end, he says, this is the best meeting we've ever had. And she felt like $1 million. And that's the way people need to feel. They need to feel good in relationships. They don't need to feel like they're not included, or that they're second-class citizens, or that people aren't listening. Talk about listening. We know that people aren't listening now. We've all had experiences in restaurants where what you order comes back 3 times and it's not your order. Or we know that people aren't listening. So we've got to ask people sometimes, did you hear what I said? I hope you're listening to me. We actually have to shout out things. I don't mean literally shout, but mention things sometimes to the people we're in a relationship with. It's not a bad thing to say, God, I hope you're listening to me. And my husband, I used to talk about things, and he'd start telling me what to do. I didn't want him to tell me what to do. I just wanted him to listen. So I would say this, Richard, please don't tell me what to do. Just listen to me. And I tell that story a lot, and people, they want to applaud because we've all had that happen. Don't tell me what to do. Just listen to me. If I want you to tell me what to do, I will ask you what to do. I think because we never saw this with our own parents, it was never role modeled for us. It's never been role modeled. So some of us are afraid to even start to do this. I have to tell you something, because I was in San Francisco the other day and with a wonderful group of young people, and somebody said, can I ask you a question? I said, of course. When I got home from the Renaissance weekend, my older daughter, who's 4, hit her sister, and we put her in timeout. Is that what you would have done? I said, I don't think so. I would have acknowledged how much she missed me first. Oh, she said. And I learned something with this. You have to acknowledge feelings first and then handle the behavior after. Because what happened was this mother punished her child for feeling. Now, this little girl missed her mother so much that she had to act out because it wasn't acknowledged. And I said, oh my goodness. And honestly had never seen this before. And I think a lot of us have been punished for our feelings. Now, feelings just are. And feelings have to be acknowledged. But we have to find our feelings first. This is very important. And I don't believe that when we grew up, we even discussed feelings. That's what I never did, and I don't think I'm alone. But this piece of insight, and it just happened recently, was so vital for me to see, because I think that's the reason we don't speak up. When we're having feelings in a relationship and we feel bad, it's like an earlier but similar feeling. Does this make sense? Yeah, it's new to it's new. But I've been thinking about it since I got home. And I think that accounts for a lot of people not speaking up in relationships or not speaking up at all.
I have a question from one of the listeners in regard to the Bill from Maine wondered, how did you know that Richard was or wasn't listening to you? You had said
because he was interrupting me
okay.
and telling me what I should do. And when you interrupt someone, you're really not listening. You're waiting to talk. And interrupting is certainly bad, negative attention. And we all do it.
Yeah. None of us have been taught to be good listeners. And it seems like a few different things happen. Either you decide, particularly with people who've been together a long time, you decide after the first 2-3 words you know exactly what they're going to say, so you're already off thinking about your response, or you already are interpreting it and not really listening. And you could be right, you could be wrong, but you have to check it out. And not many people
Absolutely.
do that.
And you can check it out by saying, if you're tired of hearing it, you can say, I think I heard you just say. And that opens up another avenue to talk about it.
Now, you mentioned the epiphany in relation to your son and then also realizing with your husband. How has, just seems like it's become your reason for being, in a sense, learning about it. Has it, if it's okay for me to ask, and you can choose not to answer it, but did the epiphany, has this focus on attention helped at all with your relationship with your son?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, he's alive and living in, he just reinvented himself and moved to Thailand to teach English. Mm-hmm. And yesterday he said, I've got new classes and they're really fun, Mom. Yeah. And I look at everybody in my life.
It's not
never
too late to start. Yeah, that's
never too late.
Yeah.
I'm probably one of the oldest on this phone call today.
I'm not sure. You may be tying a few people. You are, since I'm
83.
I do know that there's at least one other person on the call who's 83, and maybe some others too, but I just happen to know.
Oh, good. I'd like to meet them.
Yeah. It's a her.
It's a her. I was born in 1932 on Easter Sunday. Yes, Dorian, it has become my reason to be, because the universe, and I'm a very spiritual woman, and the universe is supporting me. I can feel it, and I've had such strange miracles happen that I know that I'm on a mission. And that because I've spoken around the world, and the majority of people say, how come we haven't heard this before? No matter where I go. So it's a universal subject. And if we had a few more hours, I could tell you grand stories. I do want to just tell you one in Brussels. I have a friend who was in Brussels for a while, and he arranged for me to go there and speak, which I loved. And in the audience were people who were learning English as a second language. And he had a student there from the Congo. And this is about as far as I have impacted, I think, because that Congolese student said, it was very hard to hear, Alice, in the sense that I was saying things they resonated with him. He said, but I spent my whole teenage years smoking weed, and I'm not going to let my sister do this because now I know how to help her. And I was just so grateful. The epiphany, I never had an epiphany before, and I haven't had one since. So it was important for me, and I was pretty desperate at that time in my life because in Los Angeles, there was a lot of suicide and a lot of bad behavior in the drug community. And I did things that I changed the way I interacted with my son. And he knows now. He said at one time, I'd like to do your work, but he's not quite old enough. But he's doing my work in Thailand. He is, because I'm getting feedback now where he just also looks at everybody that he interacts with as we're all walking around as vessels, and you can just pour attention right into our heads and we'll be happy. And you know how when you give somebody the kind of attention they need, it's a spontaneous reaction.
In what way?
They smile.
Did you say?
They smile. It just happens. You can conduct your own experiments.
So, again, another question from Bill related to your marriage, which it sounds like wasn't able to work. But when you got clear about your needs and could say, I don't want you to solve this or fix it, I just want you to stop interrupting and hear me out, was he able to change at all? Or was it more just at least you got clear and he couldn't? Or because we can't always control the outcome, and so that's tied into the question. I think the question was, did he change the interrupting?
Unfortunately, I had to leave the marriage before he could change. But I've heard from wives that men do change. I had people come up to me at the Renaissance weekend and say, thank you for your work. My husband came up to me and asked me if he was giving me the kind of attention I needed. And she was smiling all over. So we just don't know this. That's the problem. And there is a book out that I have not written by a man who's done a lot of work. His name is Daniel Goleman. He's the one who wrote Emotional Intelligence.
Right.
He has a book out that is 10 years old that I did not know about. My older son found it for me, called Social Intelligence. It's all about my subject. He said, Mom, you'll love this book. It totally validates what you're doing. But he doesn't talk about it quite like I talk about it, but he describes it, and it's a fascinating book. I love it.
I was thinking about his work when you were talking earlier, too, because the tie-in, too, is that he really does, Dan Coleman really does feel like it can be learned. And
it is. I've learned it.
But the issue is you can't control necessarily the outcome. But what I'm hearing, and I think it's so true, is identifying what you need is the first part. And hopefully there's enough of a dance in the relationship and reciprocity that it can change things about. But we know the divorce rate is as high as it is, and so it doesn't always. But
I think
more. Go ahead. Yeah, I just want to hear more about how you see it. Yeah.
Okay. You have to, first of all, you have to forgive yourself for not knowing. There was no way we could know this. And then you have to forgive everybody else. And that puts you in a very empathetic, compassionate frame of mind rather than so angry. And when you learn what it is first, it gives you power. It empowers you. It takes you out of the victim mode, really. Because if you can't get it at home, I give you permission to tell whoever's at home, I really need you to listen to me. It's hurtful when you don't. And don't compare anybody, but say, I feel that I have to learn how to get it from others. Or I'm going to tell everybody I know in my life that I need to be listened to, and I'm going to see who signs up. You can be funny about this. I think we need some humor in our lives. We need a lot of humor in our lives. But, yes, you have to announce. Now, I will just tell you one small incident. A lady came to me years ago in Los Angeles. She said, I really want to reconnect to my father. But my mother was the alcoholic, and my father enabled her, and I've been mad at him ever since. But he writes me these wonderful letters, and the last letter, this is an adult. She was in her 50s, I think. The last letter, he said, who are you? I don't really know you. So she came to me. She said, I have to reply to this. I think it's time. So I said to her, okay. I took out a piece of paper and a pencil. I said, well, what do you need? What do you need? And every time she told me what she needed, I wrote it down. I said, this is who you are. She sent that letter to her father. He replied. Then they started writing to each other. Then she took his letters and edited them somewhat and had some photos in and created a book for him of his letters. And he had surgery, and she took the book to him, and he was overwhelmed. And he said, I hope you only got this one book. It's so fantastic, but I'll just treasure it. And she said, no, Dad, I had to print a few books. So, of course, he talked about the money. And then he recovered, and he took the books, and he started speaking at libraries. So he had a new life. He was retired before this. He had a new life. People loved the books. She had her father back. He had his daughter back. That's one of my success stories. And it's all because she asked for help. And that's the bottom line. We've all got to ask for help. But we have to know who to ask for it from. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how that sentence came out. But I went to a conference of The Truth Behind the Titles. I never heard of this before. It was given by a group of corporate people for the first time because the lady who created this conference froze at her desk. She couldn't move. She went into a profound nervous breakdown. She'd had it. Her boss had to carry her out, and she ended up in the hospital as a profound depression. But all these women had a lot of trouble in the corporate world because they couldn't speak up, they couldn't tell the truth. What they left us with was ask for help. 7 women, after they told their story, said ask for help. We don't know how to do this either. We think it's a weakness to ask for help. It's not. It's a sign of strength. I can't do it all. I need some help so I can do it better.
It's such an important point that you're saying, and I think it is difficult. And I think people of our generation, I'm a little bit younger than you, but not that much, but it's hard because so often it feels like you're being selfish in a negative way. But we all need a certain amount of selfishness, self-regard.
Because selfishness
for that,
means that we're learning to take care of self. It's gotten a very bad rap. It is not being self-centered. That's all different. Right. You have to be healthy, selfish. But that's another thing we didn't learn because
Right.
Yeah.
I have a story here from one of the listeners, but one other question again from Bill, just to tell you, Dan Goleman's book, he has emotional intelligence, but it's also the social intelligence. That's the book that Alice was referring to. I wanted to answer that. But then somebody who didn't identify him or herself, although I think it's her, it's a story for you to maybe comment on if you would. She said, I think I was craving attention from my parents by being the good child and making good grades in school and succeeding in college and career. I always had to listen to my mom talk about what a screw-up my sister was when I went to college while I was on the president's list and presidents of various groups. It wasn't until my life spiraled out of control in my mid-30s and filed for divorce and moved back to my hometown and in with my mom while I was trying to figure out what I needed to do with my life that I finally got the attention I had been seeking. I thought it was sad that it took me being a screw-up as well as to make my mom feel needed so that I could get the attention I wanted and needed.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Poor. Oh, boy. First of all, you don't compare kids. You just do not do that. That is about as negative as you can get. So she had to listen to that. But that's what we all did. Because I'm an only child, I couldn't be compared to any sibling, so I was compared to my best friend and my cousin. Why can't you be more like your cousin Ruthie? Or why can't you be like Susie? That is, I wish I knew her name. I'd say, whatever. I think you're very lucky that it only took till you were 30.
Mid-30s, she said.
Mid-30s.
Yes.
That's very young. I understand your whole story. You're not alone. Half the world is good children who were miserable and don't find out why they had to be good, because half the time I heard this story. I think I said it already. I never got any attention when I got A's. I only got attention when I didn't get A's. So that is all screwed up too. First of all, we should be getting A's for ourselves, not for our parents. But that's a whole other story. Our parents rave so about our getting the A's that they take the onus off of us. So we end up doing it for them, not for us. You're asking very good questions.
And another question from Mary from Newburgh says, what if body language from others, such as rolling eyes or smirking, makes you back away from asking for the attention you need, so that you want to, but then you're more dismissed? What suggestions do you have on how to handle that?
Communication is about 85% physical. I give her a permission slip too. I have permission slips in my files. Ask this lady, why are you rolling your eyes? Or your eyes don't match anymore. Or I didn't realize you had blue eyes. You got to stop that sort of thing because it's so nasty. It's just toxic, negative attention. Of course she's going to back away from that. I'm shouting. Who wouldn't? But be funny and throw it right back at her. What if your eyes is going south? Or what are you trying to say to me? Or why are you making those funny faces? Anything to interrupt that negative attention. I can't see your face anymore. Of course, I've done this a long time. So I really am beginning to think that this is another sense we have, but it has to be developed. I just live an attentive life. That's what I do, which means that I comment to people, making them visible. I went up to a man standing, I parked my car in Los Angeles, got out, and the parking attendant gave me his ticket, and I said, I bet you're from Ethiopia. I happen to think Ethiopians are gorgeous people. First of all, he smiled from ear to ear. How do you know? I said, because you look Ethiopian. And you come from a place where people are beautiful. I made his day because he said thank you. And I don't know how many people talk to him, but I notice and I comment. And I've now started talking in elevators. I live in a building with an elevator, and I don't know who declared that elevators were sacrosanct, and everybody laughs because I've been told I'm very funny. I come from a very serious family. My father was a physician, my mother was a teacher, and my mother had a sense of humor, but I wasn't allowed to hear the dirty jokes. I had to leave the room. So somehow I am funny, and I can't remember any jokes. But people in elevators are now talking to me. So I know that I feel better when I leave that elevator for having connected with the people who live in my building. Connection, very important. Making people feel safe or that they matter, very important. That's what attention is.
Yeah.
Positive
making
attention.
People feel safe, and the connection. What you're referring to, that's so important. It ties into another question. Well-being is connection, engagement, and purpose and meaning, and you're really talking about this. And I'm thinking you use the word about helping somebody feel visible. Part of the dilemma so often with older people, and I've just started again teaching in the gerontology certificate program, so I'm focusing on more of the old, but people begin to feel invisible, and so it ties in a little with what I asked before. It's never too early, I think, for people, or never too late.
Or too late.
Never too early or too late. Can you speak to that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I can. We have to teach older people to ask for what they need. Older people have never asked for what they needed, or few, because I've been related to older people. So I know, I'm an older person. For instance, they've stopped giving people drugs. That's outlawed, I think. But in Wisconsin, for instance, people who are in homes, assisted living, not so much assisted living, but the other kind of living,
long-term care.
If you give, it's mandated by the state of Wisconsin now that every person in there get a iPhone with music in it, because they have discovered that people who haven't talked in years, if you give them music that they might have heard before, they will comment. Music goes right through every part of the brain and they just wake up. And what else does it? Pets. pets. And somebody told me the story about a woman who was a mute. Nobody could get her to talk. And they took in soft, plushy animals, and they gave her one. And pretty soon she's talking to the animal. And then she starts talking to the pets. And then she starts talking to people. So there are ways of stimulating this. But first of all, we have to be aware. We just have to be aware. I'd like to see it on billboards. And for most of my work, I've been by myself because people have never heard this. They don't understand it at first. They say, "What are you doing now, Alice? We know that you kept Mr. Rogers on the air and blah, blah, blah." I'm talking about attention. Oh, that's nice. Because we all think we know everything about attention. I'm the first one to tell you I didn't know anything about it, and I've had to learn all of this. And I just wish my parents were here so I could give them some. Because as educated as they were, two depressed people. And you're going to be depressed if your needs for attention aren't met.
That's so true. Yeah.
And I also read, I guess in Good Housekeeping a million years ago, that if we eliminated shame, mental disease would disappear. Then I read, when parents take their kids to the park, put down the newspapers. Mm-hmm. Put down your newspapers, because you will see your kids watching you, watching them. Mm-hmm. And you can avoid the therapist's couch. Now, this was years ago, but this is in my head. So parents, put down your cell phones, and grandparents, put down your cell phones, and sit next to these little people and say, I'm a walking, what do they call it, a non-cell phone venue or something. Make fun of it. I'm a non-cell phone venue. Anybody around me can't use their cell phones because I don't know what's going to happen to these little kids. How can they be in relationships? They aren't talking to us. They are not talking to us. They are texting us. I said I will never text. Well, guess what? Guess what? I got a phone call from one of my granddaughters. I have two granddaughters. I do get cell phones for them because I made such a big noise about this. I do get phone calls. Phone calls, I forget. It's a big issue, and it really interacts all over the place.
It's really true, and it's scary to think about the upcoming generation that just look at their screens rather than people's eyes.
It's affecting their brains.
Yeah. And it's affecting their brains. So a couple of things. It's scary.
It is very scary.
I wanted to comment when you were talking about, because it made my heart warm when you were talking about in Wisconsin at the long-term care facility or nursing home having the iPods. There is this wonderful movie I want to tell people about.
Yes.
Which is the basis of, I think, the Wisconsin program. It's called Alive Inside.
It's fabulous.
It's fabulous. You can get it from Amazon. I had seen a trailer of it and bought it and showed it to my class actually on Sunday. And I've showed it to friends. It's so fabulous. It's the person who, as a volunteer, began this notion of iPods for seniors in nursing homes, and people have been donating iPods, and it's a phenomenal film. So I really recommend that you see it and help any long-term care facilities near where you live get the money and people it's involved in learning from whoever's in the person's family what some songs are that are important to them, and then having that be part of their music, and people come alive. It's just what Alice was saying. I just wanted to underscore that because
Thank you. I met that man. He's a social worker, I think.
Yes, Dan Cohen, I think is his name. Phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Thank you for that. Yes,
yeah.
You're right.
So a couple of others. So Fred from North Andover in Massachusetts says, your emphasis on paying attention seems so close to the Buddhist concept of primacy of awareness. What similarities or differences do you perceive between them, attention and this primacy of awareness?
I think it's very similar. Being aware is paying attention. But the kind of attention that I talk about is not what everybody else is talking about. Yes, focusing is part of it. But what I want to emphasize to people is they can feel attention. They can see it. You can see a mother in the grocery store yanking a child's arm because the child is acting out. You can see parents, little kids at the deli counter acting out because they're on the ground. Their kids, because the kids are on the ground and the parents are sitting over the counter. If you just lift those kids off the ground and show them what you're seeing, they're happy. Just imagine what everybody needs. And neo-linguistic programming is very valuable, and we should all know what it's about. You can look it up. We all carry one primary mode of doing our world. We're either visual, painters, etc., or we're auditory, we're music, or we're kinesthetic, we're jocks. People will tell you what they are, really. I very often will say, I see what you're saying, because I am totally visual. You can walk in my apartment and see that. Or I hear what you're saying. Or I get it. That's a physical word. When your kids say this to you, and you can also be aware of what they're gravitating toward, if you take people up with their primary mode of communication, you're ahead of the game, and that's where it happens. If you explain something to me in visual terms, I get it. If you explained it to someone else in auditory words, and they were in the music business, or they were singers, or they were pianists, or they were with the Philharmonic, they would get it. And likewise, so would everybody, and if you explain it in physical terms, if they did their work, if they lived their lives physically. They're the football players, or they're the tennis players. I think this is clear. You will, and there's a lady in California, I think she's still alive now, who could look at a mother and a child and tell the mother what kind of child she had. Now, wouldn't that be marvelous? To know that about your kids, or know that about your husband, or know that about your partners, or know that about your boss, because then you can direct all your attention in that place, or in that, with that perception. That really empowers you, and it gives the other person what they need. So that's easy.
So but tied into that, what happens though if someone, so Bill, again from Maine, says, my wife has a hard time identifying what she needs. What would you suggest to me that would help her express her needs? It ties into what you're saying. So if we don't have somebody who can tell you what they are,
first of all,
how do you help
Bill,
somebody? Yeah.
Tell Bill, please, thank you for listening. This is a great question. He could use me. I heard this crazy lady on this show today talk about attention. Boy, I really have a lot to learn, or I didn't know this, or she didn't have a lot to learn. Just take it out to the Greek messenger place. I think what I need is, I know that when I listen to music, I really feel good. Or when we go to the concert, or when I play my guitar, if he's auditory. I'm having a hard time really knowing what you want from me, or knowing what kind of attention you give yourself that makes you feel good. What are the kinds of attention that you give yourself? Now, maybe he can think about that and know. Maybe she's a knitter. Maybe she's a painter. Maybe she likes to be with people. Maybe she loves tennis. She's probably told him, I can guesstimate, that something makes her feel good. But if she hasn't, he's got to ask her. And blame it on me, Bill. I could move here because I knew that I needed somebody to come with me and set everything up who I knew. So I asked this young man whose mother lives in Pennsylvania, if I paid your way, would you come and help me? And he was here 2 days, and it was a miracle. But that's what I needed. I had boxes up the wall. I came out of a big apartment, and before that I came out of a big house. I knew I needed to give stuff away. So I had a party. I said, I'm putting everything out that I want to leave you guys. Take it. And they were thrilled. I got notes from people. So at different times in our lives, we need to do different things. And I'm a walking example.
Yeah. And it's such an important issue. I know it's one, and I want to honor that because some people have to leave, but Alice said she could stay a little bit longer to just keep up with a few of the other kind of questions and thoughts. Bill says you're psychic. His wife's an avid knitter. When you said about
Thank you,
about
Bill.
knitting.
I have been told that. That makes me feel really good. I love it. So she's visual. She's looking at what she's doing, and she's creating something. Yeah.
Right.
Thank him again, please. Thank you.
So another comment, which is, again, somebody who didn't identify themselves, but a comment of the issue we were talking about before about this new generation. She says teens won't even talk to each other on the phone. They prefer to text because calling someone is considered too personal. Yikes, what will they do when they have to talk to people at work?
This is a major problem. And this is our world, and we've all got to start in interrupting this. I know that corporate people are screaming because they get these techs who know everything, but these techs have no soft skills at all. Listen, I'm a speaker. Take me out there. I want to start a movement. I do. I've already started it, but it's got to be bigger because we're all part of this. You can hear my voice raising. My middle son would say to me, Mother, why are you shouting? Because I'm passionate.
So how has all this changed your life? Clearly, it sounds like it has, but it just sounds like you're just a beautiful example of somebody who you were confronted with something very difficult in life, and you opened yourself to this talk you went to, and then you paid attention, and then this whole focus. So it's just lovely. But go ahead, how... Because it sounds like it's changed your life, yeah.
It has changed my life, and I think it's changing those people around me. I was speaking on a boat once, and a lady came up to me, and she said, now I know what's been wrong in my marriage for 43 years. So she's awake. I was hurting, and I was scared to death. And I think that was the impetus for me to go on my search. We don't usually search out anything until we're in pain. Unfortunately, it's really unfortunate. But that's what motivated me. And now I can see what's happening, and I'm more motivated than ever. That's just the way it's working for me. And when I started with the television, I never watched television because it interrupted me. And I got a write-up in the newspaper, and I had 125 people come to my first meeting because what I'm talking about then and now resonates with people. But I can't do it alone, and I'm putting the word out. I need help, so help me get to speaking engagements. I'll give everybody a book. Now, this book is my first book, and I've had people say, I learned more from doing the work in this book than 3 years of therapy. So it's valid.
So why don't you share two things? It would probably be helpful to mention the handout that you have for people and also mention the discount that you're offering for people who have listened today to be able to get your book, if you'd like to.
The book started out at $15, and right now for you and listeners, it's $7.50 plus the postage. So that's a pretty good deal, isn't it?
Sounds like it, yeah.
Listen, just pay me the postage and I'll send it to you. That's how I want this book out. I'm a good speaker. I'm a good researcher, but I'm really a lousy marketer. I can admit that.
I had bought your book at full price, and I will recommend it to people because I think I think you'll like it because this does speak to every different stage of development. We all need attention. You're absolutely right. And we don't always think about it, but it's both simple but very profound when you think about it.
Thank you. That's exactly what it is. It's very simple. It's almost too simple, so it's suspect. Simple is suspect in our culture, but it's very sophisticated and profound. You're right. Can I tell you another story?
Please do. Yep. Go ahead.
Okay. My stepson got a new coffee maker, and I was drinking coffee then, but I do not drink any dairy. He couldn't fix me a drink, so we were going there for New Year's. I asked my husband, let's stop for some rice milk, because I'd forgotten my box at home. So I took it. I said, Bobby, I want you to make me one of your famous drinks, but please use rice milk. Here it is. He was so excited. He said, this stuff is good. He made me a drink that was wonderful. So he could give me the attention I needed, and I gave him the attention he needed, and it changed our relationship. It's that simple, but you got to be aware. He could have given me almond milk, hemp milk, coconut milk. They're all out these days. It's really being aware of yourself first. That's how I got in trouble with my youngest son, because I didn't know what I needed, and I really didn't. I happened to, in therapy, it came out that I had all my mother's needs. So I had to get over that. But because I didn't know what I needed, I didn't know that anybody else needed anything. That's how it goes. So when I realized, what?
No, I said, unfortunately, that is often how it goes, that we just keep repeating and don't know what we need, and then we can't give.
That's right. We just don't know. That's all.
Right.
So then I gave my son what he needed, and he recovered. Yeah. And the other day I sent him a magazine to Thailand, and they lost it, but they found it. But he was so excited because he could see through the package. And all he did was text me a thumb up. That's all I needed. But we talked too. Yeah. And he's not a kid anymore. He is my kid, but he's 50. See, it never stops.
It never stops. It's true. This has been wonderful. Let me just have you say again, though, because I did get one other request for you to repeat how to get the handout and how to get the book. I'll mention about the handout. So the handout, if you go to the event page, and when you get the recording, you'll also go back to the event page, and the handout will be there. And the book, do you have a discount code? Is that how it is, Alice?
Yes.
Tell me, is it on the event page? It's listed on the event page, too, I think.
But that goes to my website, I believe.
Okay, so why don't you say what your website is?
Okay, I will. TheAttentionFactor.com. Okay. TheAttentionFactor.com is my website, and my assistant said he put the code on my website, or maybe they can just do it on your event page.
Yeah. You can check on the event page, and you may be able to get the discount through that. If you have any trouble, email me, and I'll try to help.
Or email me.
Or email. Okay, what is your email, Alice? Want to tell people
Alice, Alice, A-L-I-C-E, at TheAttentionFactor.com. Great. And if you have an emergency, you can call me up. 212-457-1940. And we'll talk.
Terrific. This has been wonderful. Thank you. Do you have any final takeaway you'd like people to take with them as they leave today? And you're wonderful.
Thank you.
Takeaway?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to say that attention heals. It makes people feel included. It makes people feel safe. It makes people feel that they're supported and that they're cared about. But the kind of attention you give people is very important. If you don't know what they need, you got to ask them. That's my final word.
Great. thank you so much for being here today. I am sorry. I know I interrupted a couple of times along the way.
It's okay. I'm going to interrupt you now.
Phone, so
I want to say one thing I forgot, and I'm interrupting you like crazy. Attention is energy, and you can feel it. I don't think I said that before.
I think that you did, but you can't say it too many times. So
thank you. That's very gracious and lovely, and I needed that. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to being able at some point to meet you in person, too.
Me too.
And thank you again so much, Alice. This was great. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Revolutionize Your Retirement Radio with Dr. Dorian Mintzer. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show, listen to past episodes, or download our free retirement transition guide, visit revolutionizeyourretirementradio.com.